Here I am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, we booked this about a year ago and then it kind of
Yeah.
snuck up on me and then I went, "Oh, I haven't really spoken to Daryl in a really long time. I should probably make sure that he's
Well, I had it. Yeah, you did it early for sure, and I had it in my schedule, which is good because it's about a month and a half ago, it suddenly went crazy with everybody booking in time. So,
Yes,
so this was blocked off, so it's good. The
perfect.
the only challenge I had is that we have our once a year snow. So it's just trying to shovel and do everything else that you have to do. So
Yeah, yeah. Because you're in Victoria, right?
actually up island in the News Bay. So, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we had about a foot yesterday,
Oh, that's a lot.
and it's still going. It's slowing now, and I
Yeah.
think it's supposed to stop for a few days, but we're not going to get warm. So sometimes it goes right away, right? So this one looks like out for at least the next week or 10 days it'll be with us.
Yeah.
So then they actually have to pull out the snowplows, which
Yes. That's so funny. I
there
mean,
aren't enough of.
no, for sure. My husband works for the town that I live in. He's a manager of the public works, so it's his world is always how much snow do I need the grader? So
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
We do have a fairly large group that have signed up, but I mean, we'll see if everybody jumps on. There was about 30 people.
Oh wow.
So so that was good. I mean, considering we've done this before, I was,
Yeah,
surprised.
that is surprising. Because I definitely have seen because I have, some of the CFs sort of jump on board with this and different provinces, and you tend to see if they're running them once or twice a year diminishing returns, right?
Yeah,
So but especially when they're recorded,
I
because then people can
know.
access them, and it's like, well, really, do we need to do it again? But
That's my
no.
thinking too, but people, if they don't know about the recordings and then
Hmm.
they see, like, we don't promote the recordings a whole lot.
Yeah,
It's kind of more for people who have, they're kind of in that loop and they know that we
yeah.
have a bit of a library, but others, they don't know. Um, so that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, so I have three people waiting right now. I'm gonna let them in. We're almost at 1:30 and then we'll start and then I'll just let people in as they show up.
Okay.
And
And I will share.
right, let me
Oh,
I need to give you some permissions here. So
yes,
one
I sent
second.
my request.
Oh, perfect. That's a new feature of Zoom
Hmm.
that you can send like that I don't know. Before I needed to like toggle something off and so I'm glad that I don't have to do that. You can do that.
Entire screen application window, I think works better, if I recall. I get confused because you go from Zoom to Teams to whatever, and then you're like, which is the best? Which way do I like doing this one?
Yes, that's perfect.
You can see that fine?
Yep,
Yeah. Okay,
yep,
good.
absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll get started. It's 1:30, and as people kind of join in, I'm gonna just get rid of my note taker because I don't really need that. Sorry about that. Got confused. Anyway, sorry. My name is Jessica Rorson, and I'm working with Sage Hill and the Indigenous Business Development Services Program. And so we've been offering these virtual training sessions for almost 5 years now. So we have quite a large library of resources on our YouTube channel. So before I get started, I just want to acknowledge that I am coming to you from Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place. We're very fortunate today to have Daryl with us. He's with Venture Connect out in BC and has worked with Community Futures for a number of years and is actually part of a CF in British Columbia. If you're not familiar with Community Futures, Community Futures is a federally funded program, and they're located scattered across rural communities all over Canada. So in Saskatchewan, there are 13 offices, and the IBDS program is actually run out of Sage Hill Community Futures located in Bruno, Saskatchewan. So with all that being said, I'm going to welcome you one last time and then pass it over to Daryl.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming to this presentation about buying a business as an alternative to starting. The program today, we're going to talk about that, what the advantages are over buying, over starting fresh, how to find the right match, the right business for you, how to deal with business sellers, and how to avoid some pitfalls of buying. So you certainly are free to ask questions anytime. The session is being recorded. If you'd rather wait till the end, there will be time for questions there, and you can turn off the recording there to keep your information private if that's of concern to you. Without further ado, we'll get started. Let's jump right into what the advantages are. So first of all, everything's ready to go. The business is up and running. You have customers, you have a product or service, you have many times a location. Everything that you need in order to operate the business is already in place. There are often better financial options. So when you're starting a business, you're starting from nothing. And you have to buy some things, you have to invest some time, and you have to go out and get those customers. In this case, you already have cash flow. You have money coming in. Presumably, there's enough money coming in that you are able to pay yourself a salary. You're able to pay staff, and you're able to pay the monthly payment for a loan that you have for the business. So in that case, financially, it's a much better option in many cases. Thirdly, you can learn from someone else's experience. So when we're looking at a business, it may not be exactly what you've envisioned in your mind. It may operate a little differently. The product line might be close, but not quite what you're thinking. But what you've got is a storehouse and a history of experience that someone else started out, tried ideas, found some that worked, some that didn't, and have presumably stuck with what's worked. So that gives you a much better starting point than having to go out and start on your own. And you can certainly then accelerate growth of the business with the new ideas that you have. So you can get some feedback from the owner on what they've tried, but then you take your ideas and move the business in a direction that's exciting and new and will help it to grow. And lastly, but quite important, is that businesses with a track record are far more likely to be successful than a startup. 5 years down the road, you are far more likely to still be successfully operating a business that you've purchased than operating a business that you envisioned in your mind but had to start. That's just a fact. It's not always an easy one because I know our ideas are always so good, but a little dose of reality is often very, very helpful in making sure, in improving your odds for long-term success. It is certainly worth it to own your own business. It can be very worthwhile because you obviously can decide your own work hours, choose who you work with, and you get to call the shots. The advantages that you get from buying, obviously, we just went through. A lot of times, what puts people off buying a business is that, we're not serial entrepreneurs, so the purchasing process can be difficult and stressful. But with the right help, you can certainly navigate it successfully. So don't let You know, the fact that you haven't done it before stop you from what could be a very satisfying choice. Jessica talked about who Community Futures is. I work with Community Futures. I'm located in British Columbia, but I work with Community Futures locations in, let's see, 6 provinces now, all of Western Canada and a couple on the East Coast. We tend to work with, we work closely with the local CFs and support them in the process of business transitions, buying and selling, and providing advice for clients on both sides of that process. Venture Connect is a subsidiary of Community Futures Alberni Clayquat, which is in BC. And as I mentioned, we work with Community Futures offices throughout Western Canada and now Atlantic Canada. Our focus is on business retention and succession. So that's really our what we're here for. So the reason Venture Connect started was because there has been an unprecedented demographic shift. As the population gets older, there are fewer buyers and more businesses up for sale. And that creates an opportunity for buyers. 98% of all businesses in Canada are small and medium-sized, employing, that's last year's stat, so it's probably over 11 million people now, which is nearly 2/3 of the workforce. Majority of business owners are older and thinking of retiring. So depending on which study you look at, anywhere from 40 to 50% of business owners will exit in the next 5 years. And that's a lot of businesses, far more than there are buyers. So it's a good opportunity. It's a good buying opportunity in a buyer's market for businesses. So if you decide that this is something that you're interested in pursuing, there are resources and there is a path that you can follow that will make your life easier. So every purchase of a business happens by moving through these 4 stages: searching, assessing, investing, and then taking over and launching your ownership of the business. This little thumbnail picture here is a workbook, a business buyer's workbook, Pathway to a Successful Business Purchase, that is available on our website, that you can download an ebook anytime, and it will provide a lot more detail than what I'm going to get into today. There's some questionnaires and other resources and things in there. If you are interested, you can go to our website, www.ventureconnect.ca, and download it there. So the first step is searching for a business. So obviously, first of all, we want to understand our own motivations. What are we looking for? What do we want to get out of owning a business? So some of the questions to ask yourself are, what kind of business? Like, what industry am I interested in? What, is it, what my experience, my skills, my interests, what kind of area can I hone in on? A critical question is, what kind of a down payment can I make? That will help you understand your budget and your approach. There are very limited opportunities to buy a business with no money down. It does happen, but most of the time it's going to happen over time and with a business owner that you have a relationship with. So that might be something like an employee purchase, or a place where you are not an employee of now, but you go to work with an agreement and a plan that over time you are going to take it over. So I am involved in many of these cases, different kinds of businesses. It works extremely well in. But if you're going to buy a business that you don't know the owner at all, you want to buy it, right away, you will need some kind of a down payment. And what you have for that will determine, sort of the price range, the budget that you can look at. for a business. Now, there are funding arms, there are some Indigenous, there are places like Future Manure that can help you with the down payment part in the right circumstances if you go through their program. So, so don't let it completely put you off. It's just your approach may need to be, slightly different. Another question is, what kind of income do I need the business to generate? How much money am I going to need to take out for my lifestyle, for my loan payment? How much money do I need the business to be able to create? And that's important because different businesses and in different industries, you're going to get different cash flow for the same price, depending on how many assets are in the business and that kind of thing. So that's an important, question to ask yourself and to figure out as well. Geographically, what kind of, what location? Am I only interested in my community? Am I looking at potentially moving for the right opportunity? Do I want a business that's mobile that I can move? All of those kinds of things are questions you need to ask yourself. For many first-time business owners, an important question can be, does it matter how many employees the business has? Are you comfortable? Do you have a background managing staff? Or does it make you uncomfortable? Is that outside of your comfort zone to manage, more than one or two staff? So that's a question to ask yourself as well. And then finally, another question is, what about a seasonal business? Can I adjust my lifestyle to a seasonal business? Does that work for me? I just did a valuation for someone in Manitoba with I can't give too much away, but sort of a specialized business that was, it shuts down in winter for a couple of months, 3-4 months. So, can I live with that? Am I happy with that? As long as there's enough, cash flow in the rest of the year. So once you've answered those questions and you have a clearer idea of what it is that you're looking for, it's time to find a match for you business-wise. So there are some things you can do to find a business that fits your needs. So you've prepared, you know what you're looking for and what will be a good fit for you. So that might mean a checklist, some things that the business must have, some things that we must avoid in looking at a business. And then we start our search. So most business searches start online. Unfortunately, there isn't just one business for sale website. So when you're looking online, you have to hunt around a bit to see what's out there. And that only covers the businesses that are listed. In my experience, half of the sales that I work with, the businesses never actually come up for listing. So those people find through community networks, through friends, through family, through other business owners, through having conversations, identifying a business that maybe has an owner that's a bit older, or that you've heard that they might be interested in, leaving in the next while, and approaching them. So there's lots of, kind of different ways that you can look to find the right match for yourself. Once you've found your business, then we need to assess it. What kind of information do we need? We need to know revenue. We need to know a bit about the customers. Who are they? Are they business customers? Are they consumer? Are there any contracts? Are they repeat? Is it all one-off? As much as you can learn about customers is really helpful. What about the facility? Is there a lease in place? Is it suitable for what the business is doing? Is it suitable for your plans for the future? Again, what about employees? How are you comfortable with the employees? But also, are they, if you need them, like if there's technical skills or experience that you need, are the employees prepared to stay on? What kind of opportunities does the business have? That's a question I always encourage people to ask the owner, because even though they may not have acted on some opportunities, um, because they've been running the business, they're in the absolute best position to know what are good opportunities for the business. And, asking that question is going to give you some, good background and ideas. Whether you act on them or not, it will give you some ideas for, things that you could potentially do in future. And then in the end, we're going to need some financial information. So we need to know, the income statement, and we need to know what assets are included in the sale. So all of that stuff comes, and those are questions that you want to ask after you've got sort of a first impression of the business and you're feeling positive. So knowing the right questions to ask can help you to look prepared and capable of running the business, which is really positive in building trust with the seller. Once you've got some information, now you want to determine whether the price that the buyers or seller is asking is reasonable. There's a lot of factors involved in determining the value of a business. What really matters most to most of us as small business buyers is two things: cash flow and the value of assets that are included. There are other things that contribute, and all of those things work together to create the market value of the business. So really, once you're at this point, it's good to get some advice or opinion from a knowledgeable expert who does this frequently. So, and understands and knows what the market is, because it's not like, buying a house where there's lots of comparables and it's easy to decide. And, the methodology is pretty clear. This can be very, very different depending on who's doing the valuation. Another thing to understand as you're looking to buy a business is that most owners let things slide. Very, very few business owners sell at the peak strength of their business. All businesses go through this sort of like lifestyle thing that we see here. They start up, everything's going well, business, becomes better and better, bigger and bigger. And then owners generally reach a point where they've worked as hard as they want to, and now they want to reap some benefits and take their foot off the gas. So once that happens, usually the business results start to look, a little not as good as they were. So depending on how much energy the owner puts into the business, that slide can continue. We see that a lot with people who are very near retirement. Their needs change, the amount of income they're looking for, they're happy with much less, and they kind of let things slide, maybe a bit too far. Lots of other people let things slide for a while, and then they put their back into it, and they, can end up with another peak. So as a buyer, what you need to look at is how much energy is it going to take me to turn this thing, back up to making, as much money as it can? Can I do that quickly? And, do I think that that is a job I can be successful at quite soon? You've asked for financial statements. So a lot of times, if you haven't done this before, the financial statements might as well be written in Greek. A couple of things to understand, certainly somebody can help you translate them. There's a few things to look at. Profit. Is the business profitable? As I just mentioned, how far has the owner let things slide? The other thing to look at is the owner taking a lot of perks? So perks might be things that as an owner we can write off, but are more personal than, absolutely required for the business. So an example might be, I own a retail business, but I've got a very nice car and the business pays for all of my car expenses. the business pays for my cell phone. The business, I do some traveling and I kind of write it off for the business. I see cafes where, someone has a cafe where they do breakfast and lunch, and they run all of their own groceries through the business. So things like that, you may find out anecdotally from the seller. You'll kind of have to use your judgment or the experience of someone who does this to know whether that's realistic or not. Um, like when I do so many of these that I know ratios, right? So if I'm looking at what are the cost of goods, then I can pretty much tell right away if an owner's doing this or that. So when you're new, you may not be able to, but you can certainly talk to us or someone else who does know that, and they can help steer you. When you're looking at revenue, is there a good amount of revenue? Is it growing? Is it declining? How much is it doing? Are there cycles? Are there ups and downs? Wages, are they reasonable? Are they paying their employees reasonably? Are they paying themselves appropriately for what work they're doing? Or are they not taking a wage? Or are they taking a lot more than, maybe the work that they're doing is? All of those will affect how much profit there is in the business. So, when I do evaluation, I translate all of those things to get to what's, a true picture of the business. Excuse me. Things like costs, sometimes they're unusual expenses. Sometimes something breaks down and it needs to be fixed, and it's a big fix, but it won't happen again for 10 years. As I mentioned, are there big swings from year to year? Are there changes? Again, with the opportunities, do you think you can grow this quickly? You need to get an asset list so you know what's included in the sale. And again, with facilities, is there a lease? When does it expire, or are rates changing at some point? So all of those things you want to make sure that you check out. Before you do this, before you actually buy it. So when you're investing, when you're buying, it's making an offer, arranging finance, and doing due diligence. So any last minute looks at things that for skeletons in the closet. So the most common way to make a serious offer for a business is to create a letter of intent. That's a document that outlines the key terms and expectations of the buyer and seller in a business purchase. So it can be binding or non-binding. Usually we go the same way you buy a house. You're buying a house. It's got, the offer is, your price is settled, all of that, but you do have some conditions. You have subjects, which give you as a buyer time to complete specific due diligence and make sure that you can get your financing. So any kind of an offer is very positive for moving the deal forward. Sellers will rarely make any concessions on price or other issues until you take the step of actually showing that you're serious and making a real offer. So now you've made an offer, and now you need to get financing. It's just flat out frustrating to try and get financing before you have an offer. You can have a conversation, but any lender is just going to start asking you questions that you're not got the answer for because you don't have a deal in place. So really, to make it not frustrating for everyone involved, the best way to move forward is to come up with a deal and then go for your financing. So as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the key reasons to buy rather than start is because you have ready-made products, service, customers, and cash flow. And that makes it more likely that a lender is going to give you money. So some of the options. So today, most business purchases are built on something that is often called a deal stack, which means multiple sources contribute to make up the whole amount. So Futurepreneur, if you're under 40, women's enterprise, if you qualify, Indigenous funding arms, all are very, very helpful. Many of them are, of course, you have to qualify personally. Many of them may be limited amounts, so they can be good for small purchases, oftentimes to help form a down payment or to help, ratios that are helpful for other lenders. So that's often a good first place to start. Banks, credit unions, BDC, these institutions usually lend based on asset values. They don't lend for every business type. They're looking at ratios about how much you've put down. All of that matters. Community Futures, of course, is more universal for all business types and situations. And it certainly can be a substantial amount, either through syndication or combined with other funding. So all of those places are good places to look. And the last place is the seller themselves. So particularly since the pandemic, most deals have some amount of money that is seller financed, which really means that that money is paid, over a period of time. And that often is not the majority. It might only be 20% of the deal, but it's the last bit which really helps to get the deal done. So all of those situations or places, sources of funding are excellent. You may use multiple of them, and that's something we work out generally as we go through the process of the purchase. Now you've completed the purchase, and now it's time to launch your ownership of the business. So at this stage, a resource that can be tremendously helpful for you is the knowledge and experience of the seller themselves. They've run the business oftentimes for many, many years. So they have a wealth of knowledge that's probably not written down anywhere. So transition support from the previous owner can save you a lot of time and headache, and it's generally very affordable because it's often included in the sale. So it's pretty standard that when you buy the business, the seller will stick around for up to a month and provide some training and support for you, and there won't be any additional cost to you because of that. It's included in the purchase price. That's the way it works. So different situations are different. Sometimes sellers stay on longer, sometimes then they're paid. But most of the time you can get a month's free support for no additional cost. And for sure you want to take advantage of that. So as you've taken over the business, you want to add some value with new ideas. As a new business owner, you probably have many ideas. Ideas of your own, as well as ideas from the seller about how to increase revenue and profits. But when you're newly in charge, my caution is to think short-term at low cost and long-term with a higher cost or effort. Don't do anything right away that's going to cost you a whole lot more money or take a huge amount of your focus. You are starting off as the owner of the business. You need to give yourself some period of time, 3 to 6 months, to get your feet under, to really understand the business before you do anything major. Most business sellers are around retirement age, so generally we find that one of the quickest and easiest ways to give the business a boost is to implement technology. That might be marketing, that might be a website, social media, a refresh of the website, whatever, to really make the business, bring the business up to date. Best approach really usually is to focus on 1 or 2 growth ideas and save the rest for later. So some common mistakes to avoid when you're buying a business. You can avoid a lot of frustration by not trying to get financing before you have an agreement. Don't ever pay a deposit to see a business's financial information. There are still people that ask for that, but really that's not necessary and it shouldn't be part of common practice. Another common mistake is that you come to an agreement with an owner and maybe it's a handshake or a verbal agreement, but you don't document it. Or you document it, but there aren't any dates. Those kinds of deals fall apart. 3 out of 4 fall apart because frustration on one side or the other. So if you want your deal to succeed, make sure it's documented. Don't try and do it on your own. Make sure that you bring in some help when you start to get serious. That advice can help you to do things in the right order, to save frustration, and to save miscommunication that can really sabotage your deal. Another mistake is not getting a clear list of assets included in the business. I see this all the time. The owner says, yeah, you know, oh, I forgot, I'm keeping that truck. Oh, well, I wanted to keep this. And I was like, okay, get clear on that up front before you start, you know, really getting involved. And then the last mistake is to underestimate how emotional a business sale can be for an owner. In the end, it's like their baby leaving home. Things can go along nicely, you know, everything's moving along, and then all of a sudden there's a wobble. And as a buyer, you'll go, what's going on? Like, what are they? And a lot of times it's just an owner suddenly sort of losing their baby and getting emotional or getting, you know, bent out of shape over a silly little thing that really doesn't matter or shouldn't matter. I mentioned before the Pathway to a Successful Purchase workbook. We provide advice at any time for people. You can contact me and I'm happy to give you my opinion about, you know, any situation that you're involved in. We do provide other services for a fee, the price valuation. So if you are interested, you can certainly talk to us about that. Community Futures, of course, for financing and community connections and resources. And that is the presentation. So while I'm on the slide, there's my email, Darrell, DARRELL, @ventureconnect.ca. If you have any questions, you know, you can feel free to contact Jessica or myself.
Yeah, and before we kind of wrap it up, does anyone have any questions now for Darrell that maybe you're in this thinking, planning stage now? Nope. Doesn't look like it. Oh, yeah,
There's
you
something
have
in the
one.
chat.
Okay, yeah. Tally, go ahead.
Oh, there we go.
Question. So what do you do if a seller is like really out to lunch with their price? Like how do you get them to negotiate down from like their baby?
Yeah. It happens frequently, unfortunately. So there's a couple of things, and usually, to me, it depends on the situation. Sometimes there's nothing you can do but time. So, you know, I run into this all the time. If, you know, well-meaning people, if they've got advice from outside that confirms, you know, an unrealistic price, it can be very frustrating, but there almost might not be anything that you can do. Like I've had experiences where people have used, you know, someone that the seller believes has knowledge has done a very poor job of evaluation because they don't do these kinds of businesses. And so they use something from a textbook or something from, like if you go online and search valuation stuff, you're going to get mostly American numbers. And the instant you do that, you're going to be way out to lunch for what the market is. So um, what you can do is, what I've had is, if you get an opinion, I do evaluation, you do evaluation report. Sometimes the buyer shares that with the seller. Maybe that changes their mind. Maybe they just discount it because they don't know, the person on the other end, and they just choose to believe what they want. Most of the time, it's time. I had a cafe that just closed 2 weeks ago, and they listed it for 179,000. And they had it for sale for about 6 months, and then they dropped it to 99,000. And it was just for sale through a realtor. And then a buyer came to me and I did evaluation, and honestly, it was 50,000 maybe. So she went back and made an offer, and it, the seller was outraged. But then, so she waited another month and then went back with a slightly higher offer after we had done a bit of a business plan and kind of looked at a few things and got a bit more information. So she went in, and I think she ended up getting it for $55,000 or $60,000. So, but it took months for the seller to, come to the realization. I had another one where another cafe where the realtor had listed it for $325,000. But it was a really good business, but it was worth, maybe 200. So fortunately, in their case, there were multiple offers, and it sold for a little over $200,000. Unfortunately, it didn't sell for, the client I was working with. They made a lower offer because their accountant thought that it should be $150,000. And I said, well, yeah, he's probably right, but seeing, the way the business is, somebody's going to pay 200,000 for this. And if you want it, you're probably going to have to pay 200,000. And it did. It sold for just over 200,000, and they didn't get it, but they weren't unhappy because they just moved on to another one. So yeah, it's very difficult. You want someone else to deliver the bad news. You, as a buyer, if you go in and say, well, your business is not worth that, geez, what are you smoking, man? They're simply, there's no good way to do that. But if you get an outside opinion and you give that to them, maybe that dents them a little bit. But really it depends on their situation and how desperate they are. So most of the time, it's only time that will change their minds.
There's another question here. If you are a beginner, what kind of team do you suggest? Sorry, it's my sorry, it's only see half of the message.
What kind of team do you suggest we have to help along this process?
Thank you.
So really, it depends on the size of the business. Most of the time when I'm working with someone, there really isn't anyone else required till after the deal is all signed and complete and financing is in place, and then you need a lawyer to, do the transaction, the final transaction. And in small deals, you don't actually even need to do that, but there is some government paperwork to do. So most people choose to hire a lawyer to do that rather than fight with the sites themselves. So mostly you need advice. You shouldn't have to pay for it. A realtor, if they're used to doing business sales, can be helpful. But most of the time, the realtors are only really interested in the actual art of the deal itself, the negotiation, the writing up the offer, that kind of thing. More, as I said, at least half of deals don't go through a realtor. So if you try and buy a business that isn't listed through a realtor with a realtor, then you have a problem, because the realtors, the setup is that the seller pays the realtor's commission, and the seller's not going to want to do that. So you need a different kind of help. So we offer that service. There are other agencies like us, but we're free to start advice. And then I always say, like, start with us and get what you can for free, and then you can decide if you want to pay us, if you want to pay someone else, if you don't need that, if you can do it yourself, and figure it out. Most people that do valuations are a lot more money than we are, like an awful lot. So you don't really want to go that route. But yeah, there are people. I'm not a big fan of the agencies that have a team that is, there's someone to talk about the financials, there's an accountant, there's a realtor, there's all of that. I mean, you don't need that unless you're doing a $50 million deal. Like, you absolutely do not need that. Basically, you need some advice from somebody who's been through it before successfully and does it. I'm involved in 100 sales or more a year. So really what you just need is some good, honest advice about do this before that. And if you're looking at buying a business and you don't want to pay anything, but you want me to look at the financials, I'll take a 10-minute look and say, I'd be worried about this, this, and this, or I would, it looks pretty good to me, but I would give you my opinion, with no charge. So find somebody like that. If it's not us, find somebody like that who does lots of these, and is helpful. It's not that easy to find, unfortunately, because it's like the financial industry. There's a lot of money involved, and so people want a piece of it. We're a social enterprise, so we have a different mandate. So get some advice from somebody who's helpful. Sometimes some accountants are really good at this and do enough that they know the market, but not all do. So, be careful. And some of the bigger accountancies charge you a lot of money, like too much money, way too much money.
Thank you. One other question. You may have mentioned this, but do you suggest buying a franchise, or if you have a good idea to start one on your own?
There's nothing wrong with franchises. Franchises are I owned a franchise 30 years ago. It's often a more comfortable way for people who are moving from, like, the corporate world. So you've had a job, you're kind of used to processes and things, and working with teams, and having things laid out. So a franchise is sometimes more comfortable for people. You really need to do your homework about the franchise. Some are good, but lots of the food ones are, they're kind of, they'll lock you in to a not great wage for the rest of your life with them, because they have figured out how to skim the cream off the top. And they charge you just enough to keep you going, but to keep you not poor, but not doing great. So if you want, if you want a food business that you actually make, real good money at, do your own. because the franchises will make sure, like, unless it's a Tim Hortons, which, you know, is huge amounts of dollars, but if it's something smaller, they know exactly how to charge you just enough to keep you okay, but not great. So, you know, I'm a bit skeptical of that. There are other things like associations, buying groups, you know, those kinds of things. So you can be, you know, like a branded business of something where you're buying your product, you know, like you are selling this company's product. Um, uh, but like I did somebody who had sunrooms, you know, so you have a relationship, you're selling this manufacturer's product, you have a guaranteed territory, but they don't charge you a big cut on it. They don't charge you a royalty. They, you know, you buy your product from them, you get a discount, you fly their brand, you do all that. That is different than a franchise. Those situations can work very, very well. But yeah, if it's a franchise where they, you know, they do the marketing for you, like A&W, Booster Juice, you know, those kinds of things, you know, you need a fair bit of money. And honestly, if you spent the same money and looked around, you could probably find a better business that is similar. You know, you could find, like in the town where I am, Craig Street Pizza, two guys who started it up, does way better than Panago.
Mhm.
Right? But if Craig Street Pizza goes to sell, they'll sell for less than Panago because Panago's got the name and they're doing, you know, so you'll actually get a better deal buying Craig Street Pizza than, but if you buy another pizza place that isn't doing as well, then you may not, you know, so so it's like a security blanket, but it's not, it's guaranteed mediocrity. Sorry.
Mhm. Yeah. Britton asked, how do you know which business to buy?
Well, if you know those, if we go back to the questions, what is it that you're looking for? What is it? You know, once you decide the type of business, so nearly half of the buyers that I work with have some personal experience with the business. They either work there, they used to work there, they know people that work there, they buy products from there. So they have a sense that this is a good business to start with because it has a good reputation. Otherwise, you look at, you know, you look at things online. I mean, it's pretty clear when you look at the review, like Google reviews give you, I mean, we all live in fear of nasty reviews, but, you know, it's pretty clear who gives good service and who doesn't. Now, it's much easier than it used to be. So you can do quite a bit of you know, work that way to look, you know, to get a sense that this is a good company. So, I mean, to me, there's like these pieces. There's the piece of, is it a business that I would like to run and that I'm capable of running? Then there's, is this particular one got a good reputation and appear to be a good business? And then if it meets both of those criteria, now you're in, is it worth the price that they're asking? And in order to do that, that's when you've got to dig into the financials and find out, you know, are they asking way too much for their baby or is this a reasonable price? And, you know, sometimes there isn't a lot you can do to change their minds other than waiting or move on and look for something else. The good thing is there's lots of businesses out there and more, there's always more coming for sale. So, you know, missing out on one is not the worst thing in the world. So be patient. You'll find something.
Well, thank you, Daryl. I think that's it for today. Thank you everyone who joined in and participated on this call. It's great. And good luck to anyone who is on the hunt to either buy or start a business.
That's right. Good luck, and feel free, contact us either through my email or through Jessica, whichever way is easiest.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send your contact info out.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care, everyone. Have a
Take
good
care.
rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.